Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the materials handling and Scalex teams from Messe Frankfurt Middle East, I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar. My name is Andrew Davis. I'm the content director for both shows, and I'm very happy to be your host for the next 45 to 50 minutes. My role as host is to chair activities, but I'm keen in the main to give the platform and the floor to our 6 experts that are joining us, so you'll be hearing very intermittently from myself. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. Your support is much appreciated. We've been delighted with the engagement we've had from our customers, and over 450 of you have registered to join us today. So that's it's gratifying, and it's I think a great reflection on the speakers that we've managed to pull together today, that so many of you want to hear what they have to say on the subject matter. Before we start, I wanted to send our best wishes to you and your family. We hope everyone's well and safe at the moment. For everyone in the region and beyond, we appreciate that it's difficult times at the moment. So I hope everyone's well and safe, and I think, like everyone, we at Messe Frankfurt are looking forward to the time when we can start interacting and engaging with people on a face-to-face basis. Before I quickly take you through the agenda for the next hour or so, I just wanted to give you some effective tips to ensure that you can get the best user experience from joining the webinar this afternoon. From our experience and the testing that we've done, we suggest that it makes most sense to log in from a laptop or desktop device. We suggest that Google Chrome is the preferred browser and best browser to use to access the webinar. If you do have any problems with the audio or pictures during the course of the next 45-50 minutes, we would ask that your first point of recourse is to refresh your browser. And if you do get the button to click here for sound, if that appears on your screen, then clearly to activate the audio, it's best to do as asked and click that button. Okay, just in terms of the functionality of the system that we're using, there are some interactive elements that I wanted to bring your attention to. From whatever device you're using, whether it's on your handheld device or a laptop, you should see that we have the tabs for people, which will give you the chance to have a look at who else is interacting and registered for today. And I'm sure if you flick through that, you'll see some industry colleagues and familiar names. To ensure that we get a bit of interactivity, we've got a couple of poll questions that we'd like to ask through the course of the next half an hour or so. So we'll be asking for you to give your couple of industry questions that we put together. So at the appropriate time, please take a moment to cast your vote on those. And there is the facility for you to ask questions. And over the course of the next half hour, if appropriate, we'll take the opportunity to seek the views of our panel members with those questions and do our best to get answers for you. Okay, so onto the agenda that we put together today, just to give you an idea of how things are going to play out. We're going to start the session with 2 presentations, one from 2 short presentations that give insight into the topic, and then we've got a wider panel session that will give us a chance to look at some of the issues in a more interactive way. And clearly, the supply chain is facing unprecedented challenges at the moment, and it's a dominant issue for the materials handling Scalex customer base. And we're delighted that we managed to bring together the speakers that we've had to hopefully share their insights and perspectives with you. So before I hand over to Gopal, I just wanted to quickly talk you through the 6 panelists that will be joining us today. So the first presentation will be given by Gopal R, who is the lead analyst at the Global Transport and Logistics practice for Frost & Sullivan, the business information provider. Gopal will then hand over to Scott Ellis, who's the retail and industry consumer products lead with IBM and working with many companies on the front line at the moment in terms of dealing with challenges caused through COVID-19. We will then get into the panel session towards the end of the webinar, and we've got a great panel of both providers of services and users of services. So we're joined by Hind Saad, who is the CEO, regional CEO for Agility Middle East. Hind's responsible for the management and strategic direction of the business. We're joined by Alan Kadoum, who's the GM of Swisslog Middle East, one of the leading intralogistics providers in the region, and someone that's delivering comprehensive technology solutions to a whole range of clients who are operating in the market at the moment. And then from the end user's perspective, we're joined by Hassan Jamaldeen, who is an expert in healthcare, in the healthcare supply chain, and has a particular focus around working for multinational companies and multinational pharmaceutical companies. So clearly, Hassan can bring some strong perspectives as to how the pharma sector is dealing with the current challenges. And our final speaker will be on the panel is Sean Dennis, who is the co-founder and CEO of Seafood Souk, which is a new business, a new online B2B marketplace that sources fresh fish for the region and the UAE in particular. And Sean has got some real great insights into the digitization of the supply chain and how technology is being used to manage some of the challenges caused through COVID-19 and some of the more operational challenges generally caused to supply chains. So I think you'll agree we've got a great panel together. So as a engage with us, ask us questions as we go, and we'll try and seek you answers over the course of the next 45 minutes. And if we're not able to take your question directly in the webinar, we'll look to get some answers for you from our speakers directly and be in touch post the webinar. But that's enough from me for the moment. So first of all, I'd like to pass you over to Gopal R, someone very well qualified to give an overview of exactly where we are in terms of supply chain and logistics in relation to COVID-19. So Gopal, over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I hope I'm clear in terms of the audio. So
yes,
welcome to all the members. It's quite exciting to see a good number of participants. We had hosted some webinars recently, and we see there is a lot of increasing interest in people getting together on the online platform and making sure that we are continuing to exchange ideas, despite all the lockdowns and social distancing and so on. So today, over the next 10 minutes, of course, I'll be very conscious of the timing. I don't want to take too much out of the discussion time. What we would do is to walk you through what we believe are some of the implications on the supply chain and logistics business from an overall perspective, and highlighting some of the key points specifically with regard to the GCC region. So it'll be a very brief presentation because we need to have some time for some discussion. So firstly, what started off in China has pretty much become a significant impact for the rest of the world. So today, as you can see from this chart, in terms of end of March to right now where we stand. So today, the COVID scenario has pretty much shifted. The epicenter has shifted from China to Europe and North America. This combined Europe and North America accounts now for close to about 80% of the incidences. Now, what has this led to? this has led to a concurrent demand and supply shock, which has impacted the overall ecosystem. So today's norm are in the form of plant closures, cargo capacity challenges, border closures, business continuity initiatives, and this concurrent demand and supply shock has resulted in emergency response systems, stimulus packages, stimulus initiatives by the government, all restricted from traveling. Work from home initiatives are in place amidst all the health hazards and social distancing. The silver lining is that e-commerce business is on a growth path. Recently, I was having some discussions with one of a few of the European logistics service providers, and one of them who were into the B2C business, he said, this is Christmas time for us, so, he was saying, pardon me for saying this, but they are seeing a significant growth in terms of their business opportunity. Now, but in the whole equation, China has played an important part, not just because it has been the source of, uh, but the fact that China plays an integral part of the overall trade ecosystem. That today, the countries that have been hard hit by COVID accounts for about 70% of the global GDP. That's the severity of the scenario. And almost all the top 20 economies, exporting economies, are under stress. And these economies account for 50% of the global trade. Chinese exports, which is roughly about 1.8 trillion, which is imports of the rest of the countries today. As a percentage, Southeast Asia, Africa, followed by Middle East, account for the significant chunk of Chinese imports. So this is the reason why, as you can see, we are all interlinked. But in terms of the value, European Union, North America, followed by Southeast Asia, form the significant part. So this basically explains, how significant the virus transmission has been, and how significant are we hit in terms of the overall trade scenario. Now, not just this. So we are all talking about supply chain disruption. So how has a supply chain, what is basically the supply chain disruption all about? Okay, just in the month of February, when we took stock of some of the numbers, so the impact has been to the extent of close to about 50 billion in exports, inability of exports of regions like European Union, US, Japan, Korea, Singapore, UK, and so on and so forth. So primarily impacted precision instruments, machinery, automotive, communication equipment, and consumer electronics. The main reason being the part supplies from China has not happened for the rest of the countries to complete their production process, and this greatly impacts the supply angle of. Now, coming to the GCC region today, globally, what the scenario has resulted in is that it has created capacity constraints for the entire logistics ecosystem. Today, air freight capacity is under stress. There is very limited capacity. Overall, freight carrying capacity has been down to close to about 20 to 30% of its capacity across most trade lanes. So this scenario is no different for us in the GCC region. Today, almost 50% of the air cargo is on passenger flights, which are being converted for moving cargo. Cargo has become expensive by almost 2x. Scheduled freighters are being operated in addition to ad hoc flights. There is no guarantees. And also passenger flights have been limited. So because a big part of the air cargo that the world moves is on the belly flights. So when you cut off the passenger connectivity, this greatly impacts the ability for cargo to move. So now, if we look at the ocean and the road freight today, Saudi and UAE accounts for almost about 90% of the total road transportation market in the GCC, and we rely heavily on the road freight for the distribution of goods produced locally as well as imported. So today, sea freight, we are facing challenges in terms of customs clearance, issues in terms of congestion having gone up today. In fact, when we were speaking to some of the service providers, some providers are actually resorting to LCL service by coastal shipping or by sea just to circumvent the locked road border. So this further creates a congestion challenge as far as the ports are concerned, who are already struggling with lack of manpower as well as even blank sailings, which is basically compounding. In fact, blank sailings also even affected, towards the end of towards the mid of April, we saw with oil futures turning negative, which means that people don't want to take physical delivery of oil because they don't have reserves, they don't have the places to store the oil, which resulted even sailing cancellations for oil tankers. So that's the kind of scenario that we are going through right now. Of course, with Asia Pacific slowly triggering back the production system, vessels are operating, and there is better repositioning of containers, flowing trade across the entire ecosystem. And of course, road restrictions on transit routes have created a challenge. Saudi has imposed curfews and in-country challenges. So just to wrap up, what should you be doing? So we have gone with the concept of respond, reset, and rebound. So in terms of how to respond, I think first step in terms of immediate action is to ensure workforce safety, set up quick response teams, respond to important aspect of enabling capacity for the customers. Today, as you can see, the freight capacity has been down to 20 to 30%. So finding capacity is important. And to reset, evaluate options from the perspective of advanced freight booking systems, which provide better visibility. The pre-COVID supply chains or the value chains are not going to be the same as post-COVID. So it is important to see how the supply chain has diversified, adapt digital connectivity solutions, and also from a rebounding, look at future industries, create a flexible solution model, and prepare for contingency plans. So finally, what are the transformations to embrace? There's a new reality. In fact, I've attended a lot of conferences, and today it is simply interesting to actually be on this platform amidst all of you and seeing all those live chats. And it's still even it's quite interactive, and marketplace everywhere. I think everything has created web-centric concepts. And logistics industry traditionally creates a lot of data, and historically we have used that data or supply chain for that matter to get a better dashboard view of the past. I think will enable future and autonomous world. Today you will see a lot of drone solutions around intra-logistics services, and also rise of digital platforms. There will be more intermediaries being cut so that service providers can get better demand visibility to be in a position to manage such shocks. And Uberization of logistics with capital to be optimized. What is important is to create a flexible model where you have a certain amount of capital invested in hard assets while you create the remaining flexible capability through an Uberized model, whether it is transportation or other services. So that's a quick context setting. I hope it was valuable for us to start thinking through some of the questions. So let me pass it back to Andrew. Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Gopal. Listen, thank you very much for that. That's I'm sure everyone will agree that's a great macro overview of where the sectors currently are in terms of their supply chain challenges, and really sets us up well for some of the issues that we're going to talk about with Scott and the panel after Scott's presentation. Just before I hand over to Scott, as I said at the outset, we're keen to make this quite an interactive process. So we're going to publish one of our questions under the poll feature. And the first question we're going to put out there for the purpose of the webinar today is really to try and get a sense of where people are at in terms of economic activity, I guess, and wanted to understand from our audience how quickly you expect economic activity to recover in your specific sector. You've got a choice of options there, and that's a poll question that we're going to run through the course of the webinar. So please vote now, or take your time to think about it before the end of the webinar and vote. And I think that will give us an indication as to where things are at. And I'm sure Scott would agree, as he's going to pick up now. I mean, in terms of the retail and consumer product sector, consumer confidence, I guess, is going to be a very important issue. And I'm going to hand over to Scott now to give you a bit more information and give you a snapshot of some of the issues and challenges that IBM are seeing, and the ways in which IBM are advising their clients to mitigate major problems in terms of their supply chain. So over to Scott.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Andrew, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly. Okay, great. Gopal, thank you very much for that presentation. It actually did really set a great context. It was really interesting seeing those macro level issues. I am the retail and consumer products industry lead at IBM, and we're actively helping clients in this region and obviously globally to respond to the pandemic. So I'm going to focus a little on that. As a result of COVID-19, we are seeing a number of trends impacting our clients that many of you will be seeing yourselves or actually experiencing. We see extreme volatility in demand for critical items and supplies. We're seeing new demand patterns as consumer buying behavior changes. We're seeing extreme inventory fluctuations with, on one hand, high demand for items that are going out of stock, and on the other, stockpiles of what were now zero demand goods. And the direct impact of this is lower fill rates or a higher cost of goods sold. And unfortunately, it's compounded by a lack of visibility into inventory count and location, especially in a market like the GCC, which is so dependent on imports. You have logistics constraints illustrated by partial loads. You have capacity constrained warehouses. You have lower fill rates, a lack of on-time delivery, both for retailers and their customers. And in this time, your application of labor is constrained by regulations. It has to be repurposed to support the surges in home delivery, where store visits are no longer possible. And finally, there's a need for people, organizations in all sectors to shift their supply network. With a shortage of critical supplies, it's imperative that retailers and consumer products industries or organizations have quick visibility of alternative suppliers, and they're able to onboard those as needed. So let's look at retail and consumer goods in isolation. Well, when the crisis hit, I think we've all seen that the industry split into two segments overnight: what is essential and what is non-essential. For those providing essential products, food, medicines, toilet rolls, household supplies, every day has become like Black Friday, especially in the early stages, as consumers sought to buy up necessities out of panic. In the back end, that drives Herculean efforts to source those products, to override traditional and fixed replenishment systems, to get goods to where they're needed most. And for non-essential companies, those providing apparel, home furnishings, all the mall operators, it's the exact opposite. As stores started to close, there's a drastic race to conserve cash, and that causes ripples all the way through the supply chain. You'll see orders have been cancelled. You'll see big projects have been halted. And unfortunately, associates are getting furloughed or laid off. Now at IBM, we have pivoted our existing wealth of solutions into 7 specific areas responding to the pandemic. Now for each industry, these have a different impetus and application. And today I'll focus on retail and consumer, and I'll limit what I talk about to number 6 there on our list, the focus on supply chain and the reduction of costs. Clients of IBM around the world have shared common concerns. A global pandemic creates unplanned stress tests for individuals, for businesses, and their IT infrastructure. Supply chain operations are no different. They're dynamically shifting as retailers respond to the escalating situation, and respond to erratic customer reactive behavior. Now, to be able to cope, we're finding our clients need to service critical customers, and they need to optimize that scarce or high demand inventory. They need to quickly locate critical inventory in real time and get it to the right place. They need to maintain their sales and product availability, ensuring real-time, flexible and responsive demand forecasting. And to optimize the supply of product they have, in some cases, as I mentioned, they're having to turn to new and unproven suppliers. Identifying and vetting those suppliers is time-consuming, and it drains what are already critical resources. And of course, what's paying for this? In order to succeed with any of these initiatives, they need to find the funding through investment. And how do they do that? They're going to reduce costs and preserve cash. So where they actually play has to be really focused. Now, at IBM, we've created a supply chain resiliency support kit that we're applying at a number of our clients. It brings together the best of our IBM services and IBM Sterling to provide key solutions responding to client priorities and challenges. The 4 components you see on the screen, they can all be deployed separately for immediate insight and savings, or clients are integrating them with the longer term in mind. Now, as a bundle, this kit incorporates location intelligence in supply decisioning. What this is a real-time COVID-19 dashboard of hyper-local data across various external and internal data inputs. And that comes at regional, country, or city level. What that does for the client is it provides visualization of supply chain for prioritization of disruptions and changes at key locations. With location intelligence in demand sensing, we use this for critical products and regions, and it has state-of-the-art machine learning algorithms providing actionable recommendations on future demand production schedules and fulfillment plans. Our Rapid Supplier Connect and onboarding provides emergency supplier onboarding and inventory availability. It's a single source of the truth. It's combined with a marketplace for buyers so they can meet non-traditional suppliers and see their inventory availability. And finally, Inventory Control Tower, that provides real-time inventory visibility and tier 1 and 2 supplier views. It correlates external risks and real-time views of supply and demand to rapidly identify risks and remediate issues. Now, as I said, these are proven solutions, and we have repurposed them to current and emerging needs. But we've also aligned them to a timeline of when our clients should use them and when they're likely to realize value, because that's a key consideration in any investments they make. They won't dilute the long-term value, but they need to see where the impact can come. And I'll talk to 2 client examples, and we are working with people in the region, but I'm not privileged to talk about them here. So let's focus on the US, because there's a lot of similarities. Now, between March 12th and April 11th, 2020, a period of just 1 month, online sales in the US jumped almost 50% compared to the same time last year. More interestingly, the number of orders that were placed online and sought to be picked up at store by customers grew 200% in the same period. Now, our client in this instance, an American lifestyle and outdoor equipment retailer, they had a pre-existing IBM order management system, or OMS, and that enables flexible delivery models with their customers. The retailer already had the ability to offer customers a number of options for fulfillment, including in-store purchase, distribution centers that would then send to home or the customer could pick up from, and of course, click and collect, or buy online and pick up at store. Now, when the retailer had to cope with sudden store closures, they wanted to implement curbside pickup and reutilize their resources. So they turned to us to adapt their delivery models rapidly. What did we do? Well, as I said, in-store purchase was no longer an option. We rapidly changed the OMS, and we helped the retailer change their processes. So now on arrival at the store or distribution center, the customer was able to notify that they'd arrived and actually register the exact parking lot number where their vehicle was located. This updated the store associate, and they were notified of the customer's arrival, their location, and the order details. Once they picked up from the system, it's marked as such, and the customer is able to deliver to the customer in the parking lot. All the financial payments correspond accordingly. So a lot of processes, a lot of functionality pivoted to help the challenging situation. Now, another example. Due to restricted movements and a fear of a lack of commodities, we've all seen consumers stocking up on essential products and reducing consumption of non-essential products. Now, for our customer or our client who essentially produces these goods, customers were stocking up on many shelf staple products and reducing the consumption of non-essential products. So in this instance, we had to provide the customer with we integrated the latest external data sources with internal shipment data. We created a holistic view of which products, regions, and channels are seeing the most impact. They were able to generate shipping forecasts that considered COVID-19 progressing over time and its impact on consumer purchasing. They're now using this to provide actionable recommendations on production, packaging, and to minimize out of stock. It provides fulfillment recommendations to optimize SLAs and avoid supply chain disruptions. Now, our client estimates that they'll be able to reduce out of stock by 20% for the duration of the pandemic. They estimate at this time that they'll save over $20 million in avoided lost sales and additional supply chain benefits. So, responding to a pandemic like this or any other major crisis, it requires organizations, institutions, and individuals to adapt, and we've all had to do that. But in such dynamic and uncertain times, it pays that we are an organization who have been in existence for over 100 years. So we're able to stop, we're able to remain centered, we're able to remain thoughtful and purposeful. And I have to give credit to our senior leadership. They've given everyone in the organization the platform and permission to remain strategic and structured, empathetic and responsive, recognizing that no one person or organization has all the answers. This in turn has enabled us to leverage our expertise, our tools, our assets to quickly help our people, our customers, their employees and communities through this unprecedented time. And we will continue to do so for as long as it takes. So I'd like to thank you for listening to me and thank the team for having me on today.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Thank you very much for that. Greatly appreciate your insights, and great to get some on the ground and feedback in terms of what businesses are doing to address some of the challenges that they're facing. So thanks again, and I really appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Now, just before we transition over into the final panel session, which Gopal is going to lead for us again, just in the spirit of interactivity, we'd like to, we're going to publish a second question to get your feedback on, and this is more I guess, a good way to take a sense of how people are feeling, how confident they're feeling about where we are in terms of the cycle of this pandemic that's sort of gripped us globally, and just wanted to get sort of thoughts from everyone in terms of when they expect to make the transition to working on site or back into working in their so we're going to post that now, and again, great to get your feedback, and please feel free to vote over the course of the next 20 minutes. But as you'll see, our other panel members are joining us on stage now, so I'm going to head back to Gopal, who's going to lead the conversation and lead this panel session now. So back to you, Gopal. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Andrew. Yes, so we have all the panel members. Very warm welcome. Very good afternoon. So thank you so much for your presence, as well as your valuable opinion. So does anybody want to have any initial comments? If not, I'll probably we have planned for some thoughts to be orchestrated through this panel. So we have in from the service provider perspective, Elaine again, the intralogistic solutions, and Hassan from a pharmaceutical industry perspective, which is very much the need of the hour, and of course Sean from a food perspective, which is also something that is a very essential requirement of the current scenario. So perhaps first to start with, I want to just get the opinion from Hind on, from an agility perspective. You heard both Scott and me discussing a little bit in terms of what kind of challenges has been from a supply chain and logistics perspective. What are your views from that of agility on what kind of specific challenges have you seen with the onset of COVID-19? Hind.
Yeah, firstly, many thanks for including me on this panel. It has been informative so far, and I'm sure it will be very interactive throughout the remaining part of the session. So in terms of, I'm going to start just a bit on a high level in terms of the region. We have seen a lot of development around improving the logistics and transport services around mainly infrastructure, and also we have seen some growing segments such as e-commerce, which has somehow alleviated the impact of the COVID-19 on the logistics sector. However, we also see a lot of issues in the shape of supply chain disruption, capacity constraint, cost pressures. So all of this have limited kind of the supply chain, had a lot of implications on the supply chain in the region. In addition to that, also we have seen a lot of restrictive measures introduced in the country, limiting business operations, also movement of freight and people, which has had a high impact on our industry as logistics provider. So like any other logistics provider, we have faced many challenges, mainly around the limiting, suspension of some key services, routes, ports, like we said this morning earlier in the session, shortages in equipment, freight capacity, and to add to it, cost constraints and cost pressures. So, what we've done is, in trying to alleviate the pressure on us and the client, we kept a close interaction with the carriers in order to stay informed of any schedules, any delays, transit times, routing closure, congestion, offloading of cargo sometimes happening due to excess booking. So, staying aligned with the carriers helped us communicate better with the client and keeping the client informed. And to that end, we have developed a website on agility.com, which is mainly focused on operational updates for our key location in the region and also globally. So that helps also our key customers to stay informed. And on another challenge is, I would say, a big challenge as well is around the contract logistics operation. Us in the region, we manage a little bit below 1 million square meters of warehousing space, and we're staffed by over 3,000 employees. This has put a lot of strain and significant challenge on maintaining operation and business continuity, and most of all, safety of our employees. So we have, and early on in the process, implemented, stringent measures around shift planning, rostering, stringent health and safety, hygiene measures, and also somehow re-engineered the movement of our staff and also the accommodation processes to also ensure safety of our what we call frontliners. Basically, what we have done in summary to overcome some elements of these challenges is to reduce the element of risk to us on our operation and also to our clients by staying informed and keeping our clients informed on current situation, and also quickly act on their behalf to help serve them the best we can. So hope this gives a summary of what logistics providers have been facing in the region. Thank you.
So certainly, in fact, the capacity map for freight services that Agility has been published has been quite helpful. I would say I had taken a look at it, and it is a fantastic tool for people to plan based on capacity availability across the world. that's a very valuable piece of insight that Agility did, during this time of, like a scenario. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think one of the, connecting what Hind, where Hind left off, was one of the other challenges has also been that while we have had serious freight capacity issues, there has been incredible amount of, people challenges. We have not had, enough people at the ports, and obviously, there's movement, the lockdowns or movement control, whatever name you want to call it. This has greatly limited the capability. Now, one of the views that we heard obviously was one of the mitigation strategies is to look at automation to offset the productivity loss. So, from that standpoint, Elaine, what are some of the views or strategies you see could support the supply chain of some vital industries, specifically food and beverage, retail, e-commerce, and pharmaceuticals, with the help of automation from your perspective, Elaine?
Thank you, Gopal. And first, good afternoon, and if I may say, even good morning, because I think with these digital platforms, we are able to connect from all over the world. So it's difficult to define the time zone. So basically, we see a real the impact of COVID-19 on the intralogistic industry, and which push us also to put strategies in place to come up and help our customers. So basically, when we talk on our business, we provide automated warehousing solutions to the customers. So we have already existing customers and future customers that are interested in. So for the existing customers which have, or they have already automated the intralogistic solutions, we have provided strategies like ensuring the continuity of their business by keeping our support team available 24/7 to support their installations and ensure the availability of the systems. Because I imagine with the restrictions we have currently and the movement restrictions, our availability of our technicians on site is crucial for the vital industries like pharmaceutical, food and beverage, and even the e-commerce as well. The other aspect that we have developed fast is what we call a fast selling approach, where we have standardized automated solutions that can be deployed in a couple of months and be used in this period of time. So to ensure the increased demand, especially in the e-commerce. So we have e-grocery solutions with a short or small footprint. Because what we have even identified, Gopal, we in our industry, we were always talking about speed, throughput, reduction of cost, but we never took into consideration the impact of crisis management, how much the automation can help us to operate during the crisis. And we see customers like My Dubai, one of our customers in the UAE, where they have fully automated operation, the warehouse, their operation or the warehousing operation were not impacted drastically because they were counting on the automation to receive or ship the good out of the factories. So this is the 2 points where we worked on. And the third point was ensuring our factories and our spare parts supply continue, because at the end it's a long period of time, and if we need to do a maintenance or any preventive support on site to ensure we have the parts available. And being a global company, we do not have a factory in one location. So we are all over the world. We have factories in China, in Sweden, in Italy. So we had to make sure that supply from these countries are ensured, even to the Middle East. So mainly the three focus, if I summarize, are availability of our experts and technicians, even locally, availability of our parts and factories, and defining a fast way to deploy automated solution to have the increase of demand in supply chain.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. So one question before just move on. So typically, how much time does it take for a typical intra-logistic solution to be put in place, in terms of an extreme crunch for situations like this? How quickly can one deploy technology in their warehouses? What's 3 months, 6 months?
Yeah, basically, so the normal approach for, let's say, the shortest automation, I would say 8 months. But now with what we have thought about on standardizing the approach, we can really deploy it in less than 8 months. And let's say 6 to 8 months, I would say the the fastest way. And here we are focusing on sectors where we have piece picking, like picking for, or say, a solution where we deliver to the end customers on small pieces. For sure, the standard automation is still there. The project which can take 2 years to be implemented are still there. But in terms of effective solution for the current demand, in terms of e-grocery and e-commerce, I would say we are able to deploy between 6 to 8 months, depending on the location and the region.
Yeah, thanks, Alain. I think that will be very helpful because you know, a lot of times, you know, we as consultants, we recommend that there should be transition to technology, but a lot of times customers have this concern of, you know, it takes a lot of time. So something that can be done in 2 quarters or closer to that, I think that is certainly a proposition for people to look at from a productivity improvement perspective. Now, let me move on to Hassan, because, you know, I think other than, you know, food, one of the important things right now that is a need of the hour is obviously pharmaceutical. So how, from you know, from a GCC region's pharmaceutical perspective, how do you think the supply chains have been able to maintain adequate supplies of you know, the required medicines during this COVID-19 outbreak, Hassan?
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, actually. This question is sensitive in the sense that it depends on a lot of variables. Pharmaceutical industry, if we are gonna categorize it, it's you know, there are the generics, which are the products that can be manufactured in any third-party factory without the patent has already expired, and which usually most of the factories in the region they deal with. For example, the generic of Panadol, the generic of other cough syrups, etc. And there is the other part, which is the patented medications, which are usually new molecules and that are for, in principle, for serious diseases and for some critical illnesses. These are usually manufactured in mostly Europe or the US. So the good thing, first of all, of the pharmaceutical industry is that governments get involved deeply into it because it's very critical to the society. So if we have seen like the first few days of the epidemic or pandemic, it was clear by the authorities in UAE and all GCC that medicine and food are a red line that the supply should be maintained and uninterruptedly, and it shouldn't impact the consumer in any way. So this put pressure, first of all, on the agents of the pharmaceuticals who are now obliged to order more than their buffer stocks, or what we are calling the safety stock, which is usually 3 to 6 months in the region. So number one, so they had to start requesting suppliers to manufacture more quantity and speed up the shipments. Now, we will look into the supply side just in a minute. But first of all, internally, we can see that the government has done their role. They put a mandate. The importers have acted on that mandate, and they're working on securing medication. Now we go to the supply part. The supply part, if we are looking into the generics, which are manufactured in the region, most of the factories, they have a safety stock of API, which is the active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is actually the active substance that's used in the medication. They have usually between 6 to 9 months of safety stock from that product. So they are able to continue fulfilling, as I can see, without any risk up to end of the year, up to end of 2020. However, if we look at the products which are manufactured in Europe and US and which are critical to the healthcare sector, for example, anti-diabetes, anti-cancer, and all of these groups of medications, biologics, for example, there are two things that have happened. Number one, we can see that the factories have taken already measures, because these products are usually owned by multinational companies. And these multinationals, they are huge. They are talking about tens and hundreds of billions of dollars. And they took emergency measures to make sure that products are secured for all the world. The reason is the following. First of all, they don't want to lose a market. And number two, they will be under legal obligations. You know, imagine a person or a patient taking anti-cancer medication and his cancer medication is out of stock. That's very serious. They can, it will have legal implications. So these major companies, they have already started to act on making sure that the products are available for the markets, for all the world. Now, what are the challenges here? The challenges is, number one, a lot of the API or the active pharmaceutical ingredients for these products come from China and from India. And as we said, they usually do not carry more than 6 to 9 months of inventory to manufacture those medications. And some of them even less because of the shelf medication. And the second challenge is that they started to monitor every market, and they realize that there's panic. So they know that everybody will start ordering more than what they need. So what we ended up with is that there is more involvement with in the stock levels of every single market. So globally, we are under every country, we can say, or every distributor is having their inventory levels checked by their suppliers to make sure that they get what's sufficient for that market, not more, because if they get more, they are risking other markets. They are gonna take possibly from other markets who will need the stocks later on. And now everybody realizes that it depends on when things will be back to normal. So if it takes longer than expected, if it takes longer than August, September, for example, then it's gonna be serious, because, you know, allocation will start taking place for all the markets. So I believe in the GCC at least, or in the Middle East, we are safe, especially in the GCC, because there are factories, there are sufficient factories to cover the basic demand of ordinary medications. And for the other type of serious or critical illnesses, we will get what we need, probably not more, so it will not be under that panic mode, but I don't see that there is an issue on that.
Yeah, thanks, Hassan. So one quick final word before I move. We do have a significant reliance from a pharmaceutical industry perspective on China for, like you said, the APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients. So this has potentially, this could be a threat. This could be a disruption to continue if this situation prolongs, correct?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Okay. Now, the good thing is that, you know, governments get involved here because of the seriousness of the issue of not having medication. No, so it's not that it's left to the public to decide or to the suppliers to decide alone. There is involvement from the government, and for this is why I feel we are safe, or the globe in particular is safe from this side. The only challenge will be the transportation, the allocation of material, and the increased cost, because that's coming at a cost.
So yeah, that's the advantage from a pharmaceutical as well as a food business perspective, because the governments want to ensure that it is it is sort of regulated. So on that, Sean, you must have seen a lot of challenges in actually sourcing and procuring fresh food during the last 2 months, because your concept is from the source. So tell us what kind of challenges as Seafood Souk that you went through in the last 2 months in sourcing produce.
Yeah, as a B2B seafood marketplace, very challenging. But with challenges comes opportunity, and we've been very well positioned and fortunate as a technology company to be able to rise to the occasion. We actually, in March, saw nearly a 300% increase in sales, and managed to match and continue to grow that last month as well. Yeah, we are in May at the moment. Sorry, I have trouble tracking the days, let alone the weeks and the months at the moment. A really good example of a challenge that that we faced has been the fact that many cargo routes have been dominated by the transport of pharma. So passenger or PAX planes, which are far more expensive, have often been the only viable option. So how can we keep the prices down when the market needs lower prices more than ever? Efficiencies through technology, which allows us a low capex as Seafood Souk, was the answer for us. But I mean, that was a major issue, as well as sort of something else I'll get onto in a second now. With import channels stifled, effective alternatives, whether it's local or international, need to be at the ready for immediate backup. It no longer makes sense to put all your eggs in one basket. Basically, single source markets allow for cost competitiveness in the short term, but it opens the businesses up to high risk that single source market could be threatened or shut off. And we've seen that happen during this pandemic. For Seafood Souk, as an online marketplace, we have many international and regional suppliers, and that's allowed us to pivot around different trade route challenges and border restrictions. Good example, during the last few months where certain markets have been restricted, our open marketplace setup with a large basket of goods from differentiated source markets has meant that, which was give or take about a month ago, we were still able to supply approximately 90% of the products on the Seafood Souk platform. A really good example would have been when Turkey pretty much got shut off. The majority of sea bass and sea bream that comes into the UAE comes from Turkey, and it came to a complete halt one day about 2 weeks into this. We were able to pivot almost immediately, to Cyprus and a number of other source markets. So there was little to no lead or cutoff time in terms of managing to bring the product in the interest of food security and in order to keep the supply available to these guys. This, paired with our partnership with Emirates Sky Cargo, has allowed us to minimize disruptions to our business and the food supply issues, I think, for buyers in the UAE. So sort of the main issues, but we've sort of managed to overcome.
And how has used the technology to to provide traceability for fresh produce?
Yeah, no, very good question, and more important, I think, in the eyes of players within the value chain, as well as the consumers at the end. So at the end of the day, at our heart, Seafood Souk, we are a technology company. We've chosen seafood and supply chain as our focus. We see the digitization and automation of traditional supply chains that it enables the elimination of unnecessary steps that cause the most tension for businesses in difficult climates like these. Technology helps increase the resilience to external shocks through the multiple efficiencies and the ability to get rid of unnecessary players along the value chain. With the global economy under fire, it makes a strong case for innovative tech-enabled business models like ours that address the conventional supply chain inefficiencies. So to sort of go a little bit micro, our entire just-in-time supply chain is effectively digitized for maximum efficiency and freshness of the product, rather than having warehousing and high capex, or sorry, high initial capex and opex. We've opted for just-in-time ordering and agility with different source markets. So from the two-sided online marketplace, connecting buyers and sellers directly, to AWB booking, to customs, and full supply chain traceability, we've aimed to integrate every element of the supply chain into what we do. And you touched on, Gopal, as well, we've created a product called SFS Trace, which provides full supply chain traceability to the buyer. So when an order is placed, a QR code is given to the buyer, and that enables them to track the product through the cold chain to delivery. That includes where it's come from, what time it's left, temperature, and geo-tracking as well throughout the whole process. We're actually just launching, I think it'll go live after this weekend, our first B2B2C iteration of SFS Trace with a company called Salmon TV, a local Dubai smoked salmon house. And they're using it for their consumers on the packaging. So one, as a marketing tool, but two, to prove provenance to the end consumer. In addition, we've already started digitizing a number of physical markets to bring these efficiencies to local catch supply chains, not just internationally. One of these being a partnership with Sahab Smart Solutions for Sharjah's fish market, Super Dubai. I guess I'll end that question on a quote that I've stolen from Supply Chain Digital, because it's particularly apt to this point. But businesses are often unaware of what's happening across their supply chain beyond the first tier. So they're unable to know where the threats to production capacity exists. That is something that technology and transparency can address and needs to happen now.
Yeah, nice one, Sean. I think that's very, very relevant, because that's one of the reasons why today all the tech-based models are gaining more prominence as far as the supply chain is concerned. So Andrew, I know you're anxious to wrap this up. Just give us probably another 5 to 7 minutes. I think people won't bother a 10-minute spillover in terms of timing.
No, I wasn't going to.
So
no, I wasn't going to try and wrap it up. I was keen for. I'm aware that we're getting lots of engagement in terms of questions as well. So
sure,
maybe please you fire away with what you were going to ask, and then I'll line up a couple of questions and we'll try and do some quick fire questions with the guys as well. But no, please, I think we can certainly give it another 5 or 10 minutes, no problem.
Yeah, cool. So I think there was a lot of interesting perspectives from a logistics perspective, intralogistics and technology, and Sean touched upon how that applies from a food industry perspective, and Hassan talked about how well we are placed from a pharmaceutical industry perspective within this region. So there are definitely points that there could be a lot more that we can continue to speak, but just in the interest of time, and also to make sure that we address some questions from the participants, I want to wrap up by asking you for what do you think in the post-COVID-19 scenario? What will be the top 3 priorities of your organization? Perhaps start with Hind. What do you think will be Agility's top 3 priorities in the post-COVID-19 scenario, assuming that we get back to like full-fledged business in maybe say 2 months or 3 months, when short? What do you think will be the top 3 priorities? Is that an issue for me or for Hind?
No, I think it's. I think we've lost Hind temporarily, so perhaps we should.
Sure. Perhaps I'll just move on. Elaine, your views on it. What would be the top 3 priorities for Swisslog, post COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Gopal. I will talk about Swisslog, maybe in the industry also in general. So basically, this is the question that we have asked ourselves, I think, in the past after the COVID-19. So we have identified our think about 1 point per sector. So if I would start first by the current project which were under realization, and we know that this project takes months to be installed. So some projects are on hold. And the point is, when everything restarts and is fully normal again, how can we prioritize the projects and limit the lead time to our customers? So we are putting these strategies in place, saying when everything is going fine again, that we can deliver and our people are deployed on the different sites at the same time. Now, the other point is about the way of doing the support. This is coming every day and it's critical. So we should not think, and we have to use the new technologies as the colleagues mentioned. We cannot always count on having a traditional technician going only on site to do any support needed. So we have used, or we are in the process of using smart glasses where we can connect virtually our technicians and experts all over the world to the site. The other point is using the big data and collect the data from the warehouse and make a condition monitoring where we can predict in advance any breakdown and interfere in time before it happens. And the third point, for sure, I think this applies on all the businesses to reevaluate the market data and reevaluate the trends, because we see now more focus on e-commerce business than high bay warehouses. The customers are cautious about spending the cash. So how we can do smart solutions with less capex and high opex as well. So this is mainly the three focus that we think about them for the post-COVID-19 period.
Cool. And then
thanks, Elaine. I think very valuable point.
Perfect.
Sean?
Sorry, I was going to go because I wasn't sure if you were just on that. I guess our three main focuses will be continued rapid growth in the region. Obviously, currently we're UAE or inwards focused. We are looking at Oman, Saudi, Bahrain, and a few other countries within the GCC towards the end of the year, all things being well. Continued SFS trace, or basically supply chain traceability. As we grow, we will consider integrating blockchain technology into our SFS trace product. We're actually currently working on a POC with IBM's Food Trust for that, for Norwegian salmon coming into the region to prove provenance all the way back to when it was spawned, what feed has been used, etc., which is really exciting. And then final point, I think, continued growth, as I mentioned before, of our basket of goods and source origin to maintain our agility should there ever become issues like we're going through right now. Touch wood, not that.
Thanks, Sean. I think very valuable points. Andrew, since we are missing Hassan and Hind,
yes.
Probably, hopefully you can join. But I think I'll pass it back to you to review the questions and see what we can address. Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Gokul. Thank you. Yeah, I think time's beaten us with Hassan, and I think Hind's having a couple of technology issues at the moment. But we'll just wrap up with a couple of questions from the audience, and I guess there was what? Yes, this one I guess is more for Elaine. It comes from AJ Chopra, just in terms of talking about how, in the post-COVID world, how's the logistics industry going to change in terms of its operations and the way it manages its warehousing and delivery aspects? What changes do you think we can expect to see as we come to terms with how we deal with this issue going forward?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think this is a very interesting aspect as well. So the main focus would be on the current challenges that we face today. So first is that we face a long lead time of deliveries to the end customers. I think even I, as a customer, I face some time due to the surge of requests. The companies are struggling to deliver within the promise of few days. Now we are having 1 or 2 weeks delivery times. The second point is how can we operate in a few, for example, in a manual warehouse, having hundreds of people or tens of people working there without and mitigating the risk of contamination. So these questions were added on top of a traditional question about automation, and we believe for the current for the short time period we have immediate impact on our business because it requires high capex. So the customers are safeguarding the cash for the moment, but in the future we see increase of automated warehouses to cope with the increase of even the demand of e-commerce, because the behavior of the consumer changes. So we have to fulfill more from the warehouse towards the end customers, and this increases the operations of picking inside the warehouse, and the customers will look to automate these processes and be ready for any, maybe, I hope so not, but any future crisis that can be political, pandemic, or something else.
Great. Thank you, Alan. I guess we've got a question here about technology. I'll pose this to you, Sean. I mean, in terms of, I know you're involved in the startup tech scene. I mean, technology is increasingly giving an answer to a lot of these challenges. I mean, would you expect to see a growth in sort of companies and sort of technical applications being used as a way of negotiating and navigating the disruption that a pandemic such as COVID-19 has caused?
Yeah, I think we will see a good number of startups, but I think a lot of the innovation in supply chain will probably come from, and I hate this term, but entrepreneurs. It requires a deep understanding of the many moving parts that makes up supply chain. And I think the corporates and sort of all the larger entities that have that experience and oversight of the issues are well equipped to be able to innovate. Where startups have the advantage is obviously no legacy, i.e. we're not licking our wounds on anything we've lost at this stage. So they're able to innovate, come through quick, not have to cover costs and things like that. And yeah, remain agile effectively to address the issues. So yes, startups, we will see them coming. I think this region in particular, the Middle East and the UAE, because it's such an important location in terms of logistics, I think it's one of the few times that Dubai in particular in the UAE really warrants a startup hub that's focused on supply chain. We have Emirates, we have the ports here. It's a phenomenal opportunity for this region to really lead the way, I think, in providing a lot of this technology.
Great, yes. No, I'm sure there's, yeah, sure, lots of people out there would agree with you on that point for sure. Alan, on social distancing, we're getting a lot of questions around how you, how you're managing the costs that are associated with social distancing, and clearly you work on behalf of companies in this sort of area. I mean, what advice are you giving your clients, and I mean, how are you addressing this particular topic?
Yeah. So regarding the social distancing topic impacted any business. So as we see today, most of us connected from home. So we are facing this challenge of interacting. I would even call it physical distancing rather than social distancing. As I see today, we are hundreds connected to this webinar, and we are socializing somehow. So I believe it is more physical distancing than social distancing. And therefore, the most important for us or to our customers is to, for example, create site groups where we have people working on the sites, but without interactions with other people to avoid cross-contamination. Digitalization is very key. Maybe being a global company, it was not difficult to really work from home. We are built on technology, and we use digital platform every day. So the only difference was, instead of having a 50% percentage, we turned out to be like 100% for the meeting. So the second point, or the third point, where we advise our team and even the customers put in place, is the daily checkup. This is was important and vital for us to check our employees going to sites before doing any intervention. So by taking the temperature, giving them the right precaution equipment in terms of gloves, glasses, sanitizing. These are like small actions, but are really important and essential to avoid any contamination. Because imagine one of our team is infected, let us say, and thanks God it didn't happen so far. It blocked us going to support the customers. So this was key for us to protect the teams and able to support at any point of time.
Okay, yes, thank you. Getting the thumbs up there from Sean as well, I see. Okay, and I think the final question, we'll wrap up on this one because I'm conscious people's diaries might impinge on their ability to stay involved. So let's wrap up. This is a very apt way to wrap up and include you in this, Gopal. But in terms of the post-COVID times, do we think that contracts need to be reworked? I mean, how are you? I mean, clearly you're all involved in contracts with managing your relationships with, be it suppliers or clients. I mean, force majeure seems to be a phrase you see associated with lots of sectors at the moment. I mean, do you think there's going to be a general push to try and renegotiate contracts and factor in some of this stuff that we're talking about that, frankly, 12 months ago, people were not really as hot on that? I don't know if we would just quickly, everyone can have a quick stab at that question. Maybe start with yourself, Gopal, on that.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. So definitely, yes. In fact, just about last weekend, I was speaking to a liner logistics company based out of North America. And this guy flashed at the start of the meeting that, look, we covered you in our customer magazine about 8 years back when you were in the Asia Pacific. I said, okay, what's that? So there was a one-page article that I had written for this customer magazine, which was titled "The Risk of Not Thinking About Risk." So I said, look, 8 years hence, that's what we are faced with right now. Today, the fact that we have actually taken things, like we have taken things for granted and pushed the reliability to such an extreme that, like whenever you talk to a customer and say, when do you want this? The customer start, the fashionable statement saying, I want it yesterday. So it's like the limits were pushed. I think this current pandemic scenario is actually helping us to reevaluate what is reasonable and to make sure you construct an agreement on that basis moving forward, and not just have something wherein you expect everything to be 100% perfect. So that is that. So there will be an element in terms of both business model, how you're operating in terms of flexibility, how you're going to use capital, how you're going to. I saw a lot of questions around digital transformation. In fact, I was presenting, a slide in the best way. I got a quick picture on from somebody which said, who is driving digital transformation, CEO, CTO, or COVID-19? It's actually COVID-19. So the crisis is actually managing digital transformation. So these are some aspects one needs to consider and factor in, risk in a significant manner in terms of the contracts. And that's what needs to be executed for at least a foreseeable future of the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you, Gopal. Sean, I don't know if you want to have a quick.
I can give a quick bit. I mean, we've been fortunate enough, because we operate on some of the spot prices, not to have to worry about contracts from our side. But having said that, from buyer's side, I think flexibility is sort of the word of the hour, especially now. And I've seen a fair amount of that, both on the buyer and supply. Whether it will affect things long term, I would be interested to see. In terms of technology playing a part on that, can be the integration of smart contracts, which can automate a lot of the processes, and where things go wrong, the wrong word to use, but blame or liability can be assigned at various different spots, and pricing can be changed based on agreements and flexibility. So smart contracts in the form of technology is where I would like to see this go, and use COVID-19 as a push.
Okay, thank you. Actually, perhaps we'll wrap up with the final question, but it's a bit logistics related, so I'll push it towards both Hind and get Alan's take on it as well. But in terms of COVID-19, I mean, do you see it as being warehouse automation is a given going forward? Can you see only a push further in that particular sector?
Shall I take it first, or maybe?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, can you repeat the question? I had an issue with I heard about automation, but I didn't hear the end of the question.
The post-COVID-19, will that see the adoption, facilitate a greater push into warehouse automation? Is that just a natural response to dealing with this?
Exactly. So we are currently facing the surge of requests for the moment, mainly about the e-commerce business. We see that many customers are interested in e-grocery. So how can because we see companies like Carrefour, they redeployed thousands of their employees into their retail to cope with the grocery picking and the demand, and the companies are looking, saying, okay, how can I add maybe automation to my back supermarket and be able to do e-commerce from there and be ready for the future? So we really feel, say, this is how we say this, the positive impact of the COVID on our business by getting more requests of automation, and customers would take this question more seriously, as Gopal mentioned. So the management of risk, or we've been thinking everything as granted, is no more the case. We have to really take up the question of risk and evaluate, is it only about return of investment? I don't think it's no more the question. It's still the point, but it's no more about ROI. It's about survivability of the business as well.
Okay, and finally, Hind, for yourself, I mean, your clients, a push for automation is.
I mean,
look,
we've started. I mean, we have seen this trend of automation and optimization way before the COVID. I think the COVID has accelerated these requirements. We have started working with our partners in our system partners a while back to start automating, reducing risk on labor, and also because we see trends from the customer to require optimization and cost reduction, I mean rate reduction, right? So that's what the future is going to become. You have to automate, you have to become faster, more flexible, more agile in order to compete.
Okay, sounds like a good place to wrap up. Listen, we've had, first of all, I just want to say a big thanks to everyone, to the speakers for giving us your time and joining with us. This is a first venture for us in terms of doing the webinar, but we've been really encouraged by the buy-in from both speakers and from people who have been interested to take time out of their schedules to listen to what you have to say and what we've been able to deliver. So thank you very much for that. Other than that, I just hopefully, just me signing out, just to say that in terms of going forward, we're hoping that this is going to be a regular series of topics that materials handling and Scalex is going to deliver via webinars going forward. So we've already settled on our next topic, which is going to be around how innovative tech-enabled business models can address supply chain inefficiency. So very much touches on what we were talking around as we were concluding there, but that's going to be the next topic. Very keen to hear from companies and individuals that might want to contribute to that. Feel free to get in touch with us. And other than that, thanks for taking the time to participate and attend. It's gratifying to see such wide industry engagement, and we look forward to speaking to everyone in the future. And just to let people know, the webinar will be made available to everyone post the event via email, so you'll be able to catch up on the bits that you maybe missed or want to. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, and appreciate the support of all the guys on the screen, and everyone safe, and we look forward to being in touch with you again going forward. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.